I'm glad I'm challenged.
Welcome, everyone. So today I'm very excited to share this new success story with you. We have Dr. John Furlong from the UK, and he actually specializes in. Why don't you introduce yourself, John, to the rest of our community?
So yeah, Dr. Furlong here. I'm actually in Connecticut, but it's sort of New England, but it is related to the UK that way. But yeah, so I'm a naturopathic doc. I've been practicing for 36 years, and just sort of came across the program, and it touched a familiar theme in my mind that I've been wrestling with for a number of years. So I was intrigued immediately.
Yeah. So Dr. Furlong helps other people improve their health without pharma by teaching them how to repair their body systems. And just to give other people some context, what was life like before you joined our program?
Yeah, so I'm an independent practitioner, one of the few sort of left in my area, and I was tired of dealing with insurance a few years ago, so I ditched insurance and went to a direct pay model, which is better in some ways, has its own challenges in others, and I kept wanting to keep moving to this idea of really empowering patients to take some of their health into their own hands. You know, learn how to do preventative things, learn some of the ideas of symptoms that might be, you know, certainly problematic versus those that don't really require a visit to the emergency department, and just support them in their quest to be healthier. So, you know, finding an avenue for that is tried a couple different angles, and then I saw the course, and it seemed to click.
Perfect. And what really motivated you to join our program in the first place?
Well, I think as I was talking with Marissa, it was really synchronicity, because I had my practice had really slowed down in the first 3 or 4 months of COVID. So my helper, she decided to go on furlough. So it's like, okay, I don't blame you, because it was pretty slow there, and so then I had more time on my hands, and I just started thinking, I've got to find ways to put my information that I've learned over the 36 years, put it out there in a system more than just one-on-one. So, and then the course just seemed to address that very idea. So it was kind of it was a natural fit, really.
Yeah, and since joining our program, we've been able to help Dr. Furlong package the expertise that he already had through decades of working in the field of healthcare and medicine into a digital asset that generates not only income, but also impact, even while you sleep. And I'm very excited to have him here today because he can share his experience through that transformation. But let's walk us back through just in the beginning, right? You mentioned synchronicity. Can you tell me more about that? Like, what really made you decide this was the good fit? I want to work with Dr. Zoda. I want to work with his team.
It just made sense, I guess, to me, was the basic thing. You know, the idea of, you know, I'm not particularly a tech savvy person, but I'm aware of the power of the internet and the connections through social media. Certainly, we have no doubt of that. And using that in a way that wasn't, you know, practicing medicine over the internet, which I'm not a big fan of, but finding a way to educate people and lead them in a way that they're kind of moving already. So I put a lot of attention in my patients to those that are wanting to kind of take the ball and run with it. And that was actually my target audience initially, was patients that had shown really a lot of interest in doing some of their own self-care and learning more about how to stay healthy. And so that seemed like, well, gosh, if I can reach out, you know, to 20, 30, 40 people at once and give them the information they need without having to repeat it 20 or 30 or 40 times, that's kind of a no-brainer. So it just made sense to use the technology in that manner.
Yeah. And so did you how to put this? A lot of doctors and healthcare providers, they're first attracted to work with me because they're interested to work less, make more. And one thing that you mentioned is that with the old model, trading your time on one-on-one consultations is just very ineffective. And part of the reason that you want to transition into a online course module is to kind of cut back on some of the time. Could you talk to me about more about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so after COVID had kind of, been on a plateau for a while, the practice started picking up, and that was great. But I kind of decided that I really kind of enjoyed the 3 day a week that I had shifted to, and wanted something to fill in the time, because I take a fair amount of time with each patient, so it's really difficult to do, to meet people's needs financially, without charging huge amounts of money and yet still meet my needs. So I needed something to fill the gap in there since I was working fewer days of the week. And the fee for service model is also, just sort of difficult because it sort of seems sort of cross purposes, because you really want to work with a person and not just figure out, okay, I've got to earn X amount per month to keep the lights and all that. So having the freedom to do some of this education work, because I was a professor in the medical school here in Bridgeport for 5 years, so I'm used to teaching. To expand that to a group of people that really wanted to learn, and to have that sort of augment my practice finances was, again, just made perfect sense. So that was a really good fit and a good time for it. A year ago, probably I wouldn't have had the time because I was just running after the practice. But now with a little bit more time, then it's like, oh, okay, now I can shift gears and put things into a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure you've probably noticed, especially within our colleagues in the healthcare industry, one of the biggest things that holds most people back from just taking action is, for example, the lack of time. They just can't find the time to make this work, even though long term, like in the short term, it might take some time to set it up, but in the long term, this asset is able to help them cut back on their clinical hours, spend more time with their family, do more, impact more, without having to sacrifice their time. So to the people that are listening to this, might be struggling and might be considering joining this program, but they just don't feel like they don't have the time, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle at first. I tend to work in concerted chunks of time. Um, that's just the way my brain has always worked. It's like, okay, set everything aside and give me 4 or 5 hours where I can be like totally immersed in something, and then I kind of get in the flow and it works better. But like you alluded to, finding that big chunk of time was a bit of a task. So I decided, okay, how can I arrange it? And so I took, Thursday mornings, I'm better in the morning. So I said, okay, let me take a 3 or 4 hour chunk of time and just do as much as I can there. And that worked really well. I was able to go through the different sections of your course efficiently and all that. It got a little challenging for me because I would sort of forget some of the stuff from week to week because I didn't have chunks of time to do, 2 or 3 times a week. But it worked. I gradually sort of took notes and then would go back and review some of the things that I'd seen before, and then okay, let's play it forward, and then it had some better continuity. But yeah, I just decided, okay, this chunk of time is what I'm going to do, and it's time that I could have spent doing other things and supporting the practice maybe in a little bit better way. But as it's turned out with COVID settling down, and I don't know, maybe people wanting to do more self-care, preventive stuff, I've been crowded at work as well at my practice. So I'm glad I did it at the time I did, because I wouldn't have had the time in the late winter and spring coming up.
Yes, speaking of the COVID situation, there's a lot of people out there that, I think in general, a common observation that I had in working with our community, as well as our students, as well as just observing our colleagues, is that a lot of them, they tend to undervalue their expertise, right? We go through years of schooling being told we're not good enough, or a lot of the times we're just repeating the same one-on-one explanations in our consultations, that we sometimes forget there's a huge market out there. And the reason I mention that is because the people that are listening to this, one thing that might be holding them back is that they just don't think there's a market out there. They might be thinking, oh wow, there's a lot of, all this information is out there for free. Who would buy my course?
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think two things. One is I've sort of already had a couple more courses in the back of my mind. I'm saying, okay, I understand the concept of the system. I've shown that the system works. So I had my first 11 people sign up, and about a third of the way through the course. So that's been great. So I have some other ideas brewing, and it's like, wow, this has some really broad application. And one of the things that struck me in one of the meetings we had, there's some support meetings that your course has, which has really been helpful, is one of the other docs presented an idea for a class, for a course that he was going to offer. And it was a fairly niche type of a topic. But I thought, wow, that's a great idea. And it really said, if I was into, it was about office statistical analysis and using office experience in that. If I was, in that mode, I'd really be interested in that because he had it really well organized and set up. So I think you're right. I think that, so many docs have experience and they may think, gosh, everybody knows this and all, but the unique experience they have brings something unique into the, other docs' awareness. And those little hints that we can pick up from each other are really invaluable and come from sometimes unexpected places. So it's, there's good stuff out there. And I think I've been impressed with the ideas that people have.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Well, you mentioned before joining us that you had a multiple different kind of flood of ideas and different course offerings. And did you mention you even had a book as well? Like, or was that just an idea?
Well, yeah, I definitely had an idea for a book, and thinking of getting those chunks of time of concerted effort in writing was daunting. But it's interesting you say that, because the other thing with a book is I thought, gosh, nobody's really going to want to read that. It's like, I see this thing happening with patients, or they're getting a great response, or they have this experience. And it's sort of interesting for other people to hear about and share, but I feel like it's kind of like, it's like I see every day almost. So it didn't seem special. And so I never really felt like I wanted to write a book. But the course is so much more sort of real time and engaging with people that have signed up, that it just feels more satisfying than a static book. I mean, I love books, but I kind of realized I don't really want to write one.
Yeah, that's true. We tend to work with a lot of there's a large majority of our community base that's coming from the academic background, right? So as doctors or as healthcare providers, a lot of the times we're already doing some form of teaching during the ward rounds or during the academic conferences or during the journal meetings. And so a lot of the times it's just about finding the right template to kind of plug into to share that expertise. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I agree with you. If you write a book, it's a very daunting process. And I know some of our students, they spent 2 to 3 years writing a book, right? One of the students that we work with actually works with NASA, and she wrote a book, and it's a very grueling process to go through multiple edits, multiple drafts, submit the manuscript, the back and forth. But the worst thing about that is that you don't really get that tight feedback or that connection that you have with students, especially in the online world. Whereas with an online course, you can actually directly communicate with your students. You can see people's lives change. You can see people make progress, and it creates a much more valuable dynamic between the teacher and the student in the world of education.
Yeah, I mean, one of my logistical challenges is because I really enjoyed the Zoom connection with the people taking the course, because I mean they'll come up with questions that I hadn't considered, and I'm constantly sort of asking them, so how are we doing? Are we meeting your needs? Do we need to modify things, whatever, shift the focus here and there? And so far it's been like, hey, thumbs up, it's great. I'm learning a lot and enjoying it. So it just feels really good. And I know some of the people, because they're patients or former patients that have moved to a different area. But some people I don't know. So it's interesting to kind of get to know them on Zoom, but yet have this dialogue happening at the same time. It's been really interesting and really helped to sort of guide the evolution of the course or other courses in my mind.
Yeah, it's almost like a lot of people they might think, oh, I need to have all of this figured out. Like I need to know the exact course idea. I need to know exactly what I'm going to teach. I need to know exactly who I'm going to serve. But the more I start doing this and the more I see our students succeed, the more I realize that it's almost like the course creates itself. Especially once you have a community like Dr. Furlong here, who now has a growing community of 11 students and counting. It's almost like this the students reinforce and give you that feedback on exactly what they want to learn and exactly how you can best help them. And the course just creates itself organically, almost effortlessly. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of doctors they feel really held back because they feel like they need to know exactly what to teach, exactly how to set it up, exactly who to serve. But Dr. Furlong is a testament to, hey, it all starts with having those students that you can work with and then taking their feedback to create a course and a valuable experience for them and helping people in order to help them get the results that they want. And it's almost like the course creates itself.
Yeah, I was just looking through because I have a whole bunch of these mind maps that I had written out about this course. And this is before I knew about the program. And it's like, oh, yeah, this was sort of the idea of a book, different topics and how it would all lead in and how to weave things together. And yet it was just there, what to do with it. But now it's like I have some place to put that that isn't sitting down and writing a book for 2 years or something like that. So that's why I say that synchronicity really clicked because I had done all this sort of prep work, rattling around in my head anyway. And then it's like, oh, this would fit there. And so it was meant to be. What can I say?
Yeah, you have a system to plug into, right?
Yes,
Otherwise,
exactly. Because I didn't really want to learn that system for myself. I mean, I just wouldn't have done it. But having you have done all that homework and having gone through it yourself, it sounds like a couple of iterations. It's like, oh, well, I'll just like follow the roadmap and I'll get there. I mean, I might hit some potholes along the way, but this guy's already done it. So it saved me a lot of wear and tear. I just wouldn't have done it otherwise.
yeah, that's one thing I've observed in you that a lot of students tend to struggle with, but it's also one of your biggest strengths that I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you just trusted the process. You just trusted that, hey, this
Yeah,
system works, this system is proven, and you didn't procrastinate. You didn't like have all these limiting beliefs that might hold some people back. You just trusted the process and you believed and you valued your expertise and you just plugged it into it. And that's why you followed the steps and you got the result that you're achieving right
yeah,
now.
yeah. It was really kind of, yeah. I mean, I've got a little clunky things. I got to, sand it down a little bit so it's a little bit smoother. But it worked and it was like satisfying because it was a process that made sense and sort of built on the different steps and seeing the results. People are doing well, so hey, let's do more of this.
Yeah,
Yeah, good.
absolutely. One thing that holds some people back, and I think you mentioned this as well, is typically like the tech side of things. And so for the people that might be like worried about they have to build a whole new website or that they're gonna struggle with some tech or that they're gonna have to like hire some website designers and engineers, like what advice do you have about our
Ah,
process?
well, I would say the connection you have in the course with Kajabi has been pretty wonderful because I mean years ago I had a website and it was just a constant frustration to try to modify text or put in notices or change photographs or whatever it was because you'd have to contact the person and they were busy and it was just a pain in the neck. So I kind of ditched it. I actually just unplugged my website because it just wasn't worth the hassle and the effort. And it always felt like it was behind. Um, but Kajabi is easy. You just write something and plug it in, and it shows up. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Um, I'm not used to sort of going through a series of clicks, almost like an algorithm of clicks. I don't do that very much, and so I kind of have gotten lost in a couple places with that. But I know it's just a matter of being slower and more systematic in following your directions, basically. Um, so I don't feel too bad about that. But yeah, I think the tech part was a little daunting because I really don't do any of that. Um, but it hasn't been as bad as I thought, and I've sort of been able to work through most of the hiccups. You and Rissa have given me a couple of pointers that came at like really important times, because I give myself a time frame. Like, okay, I want it like the offer online by this date, and I want to have it engaged and playing by this date. So I was getting a little nervous there in a couple spots, but you filled it. Oh yeah, this is what the deal is. This is a hiccup, and so that's it. And then I plug it in, and so I made it under the wire, and got it up online at the time that it was supposed to, and without too many hiccups. So that's good enough. That's good for me.
Yeah, 100%. It might actually be helpful for some of the students or some of our community members listening to this to walk them through the 4 steps of our program, right? Dr. Zoda's 4 steps of launching your online course. Right now, you would be at step 3 where you're building out the course.
Yeah.
So why don't we go back to step 1 when it was just getting started, your course idea, identifying who you want to serve, what you want to teach. What was your process like through step 1?
Step 1 was actually, for me, it was pretty easy, because that's kind of what I had in my head and what I'd done all those mind maps for. It's like, okay, I want to empower people to understand enough about their body and their health and their different systems so that they would kind of get a sense of what they could or needed to pay attention to, and how to sort of repair things or get things to work better functionally. So that was where I started. And then it's like, I had contacted a number of the sort of health-oriented Facebook groups, and got a little bit of feedback there, but not enough for me to feel like, okay, this is the deep end of the pool I'm going to dive into. And then I realized I had a whole bunch of patients in my contact list that I hadn't seen for a while, or that had moved away, or some that had kept in contact and were close by, saying, well, let me float the balloon there. So I made up a survey, which is one of the steps, and sort of presented the question about, would you be interested in this course? And then I think I had like 6 questions that gave me a little bit more information about, well, how much time would they be willing to spend? What sort of a level of fee they would think is reasonable? And if they had any concerns about the technical side of things, do they have access to Zoom? Are they familiar with that? And I got response. I got about 30 responses from that. So that gave me enough to say, okay, people are interested. 30% or 30 people said they'd be willing to, do it right away, as far as, and the fees were reasonable. So I decided, okay, that's my group. And then I started to send out the more detailed introduction to the course, so they had a little bit more meat to understand what it was. And then said, okay, it's open on this day, and they signed up. I had a bunch of people sign up, and then I sent a reminder out about I think 2 or 3 days before the deadline, because I decided to limit it to 25 people, because I didn't want it to like be running ahead of me and me madly trying to catch up and just be totally stressed. So I decided to keep it at 25. So I had a cutoff date for the sign up. And so I sent a reminder out like 2 or 3 days before the cutoff date, and I had another burst of like 4 or 5 people sign up then. So then I was like, okay, that's good. I got 11 people. I can handle that, and then that was it.
Yeah. So step 1 will be getting started, getting crystal clear on your idea. Step 2 would be actually selling the course, which you already talked about. You got 11 students, absolutely amazing. And one thing that people might ask is, hey, that's interesting. We're selling the course before we actually build it, right? The sell before build philosophy that we teach our students inside the community. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, that was a little interesting at first, because I heard the concept and like, wait a minute, I've had this pretty solidified in my head now. How can I adjust my grand idea? But then the more examples you gave, and the way that it made it adjustable sort of in real time, rather than a static thing that people really didn't have any choice about if it was working for them or not, that just kind of made sense. And I've done enough presentations and all that I'm pretty fast at putting concepts onto slides and getting it out there. So I didn't really worry about that tech part so much. I thought, well, that makes sense. I can start with the core of an idea, have a few highlighted areas, maybe 4 or 5 sections in my mind, but yet let people's feedback fill in the gaps and fill in the content to a great extent. And it worked. It just made sense. And people have already kind of guided me a little bit more in one direction that I hadn't really anticipated. But that's okay. I have the space to do that because it's not all prepackaged, pre-done, and all set in stone. And that's an interesting thing that I never thought about or would have considered as even doable. But it just made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that leads us to step 3, which is now where you're going through, which is building out the course. You already
Yep.
built out the first few modules and you're about to build out the rest of your course, correct?
Right. Right. And that was also an interesting thing because as I demonstrated with my mind map, that's the way my mind works. I come up with a core of an idea and then just all sorts of things start hitting it. And then I have this, sort of mass of ideas and connections and interconnections. But I realized from my teaching years that some people don't learn that way and it just blows them apart. They just can't deal with it. So the structure ideas you had for the course where it's like, okay, you start with a slide that tells people what you're going to do, what you're going to cover, and you show that again at the end. So this is what we did. And it's more of a linear type of pattern that I think really more people are familiar with. And so it was a bit of an adjustment moving in that direction. But that was one idea that was really useful. And then just the pointers in how to make a good course, is really focusing on key principles and finding ways to bring those out with stories or examples. So it's not just dry kind of, just facts and dry stuff, and giving little tags to concepts, little phrases that you use a lot. That's useful. And it sort of helps. You can always refer back. Okay, remember, we're talking about the roadmap to repair of your GI system. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember the roadmap thing, and it recycles it in people's minds. So that was a good tip. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really common feedback that we get from our students. Like there's a lot of things that we do well, especially within our community. But one thing that we do really well is creating high quality courses and educational content that people need, want, and love. And a part of the reason, like my proudest few modules inside our own program is actually step 3, which condenses basically my years in online education and all the common patterns that I found working with so many people in the healthcare industry. What the most common patterns, basically like the DNA of what makes a really great evergreen educational course. And this comes from years of like presenting at academic conferences,
Right.
preparing lectures and slides like that, but also observing and working with so many great professors, great academians, great clinicians inside our space and helping them publish their content on the internet to create that's truly evergreen, truly passive for them. And so I'm really happy you mentioned that too.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I in one of my lectures in a neurology course, I started with a video of the ice dancing champions of like 2019 or something. And just to show how the integration of the mind and the body and the brain and the muscle memory and all that stuff would show up in an extremely high level. And after, it was about an 8-minute program. And after about 4 minutes, I said, okay, you got the concept there. And I had like 3 or 4 students say, no, stop. We want to watch the whole thing because it was just solidifying this idea of symmetry and movement and balance. And so those little concepts, I've been able to work those in to continually refer back to in the slides so that it'll reiterate it and it'll get deeper into the folks that are taking the course, get deeper in their minds. So this works for me. I can understand this concept. So it's been fun to kind of think that way too.
Yeah, fantastic. And so the next step that, getting started, setting the course, you already got your first few students, your first cohort, and then building out the course now. And step 4 would be automating the course, which is the next step that you're going to venture into. Talk to me about that.
Well, I can't do that because I haven't gotten that far yet. I
Yeah.
was kind of psyched to like get it online, get the students. I'm still working on the lectures because that's part of the deal. So I actually haven't put that 4 hours on Thursday morning aside to say, okay, let me go to the next step. But because I have these two other ideas for other courses, I yeah, I got to get on to that so I can kind of preempt my learning curve a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually the fun part. Once you start, because now you
Yeah,
got in the course, you validated your offer, you made sure that you got your first few customers, your first few students, and they're happy. The fun part really comes when we're starting to automate the course so it runs
yeah.
without lifting a finger.
I totally get that. And if I can make that tech thing happen so it sort of unfolds like you should see the video of it's an animated video of that new telescope they put out, James Webb telescope. There's an animated video of this thing unfolding in space, like who knows how many miles away, all by radio communication. It's unbelievable. And that's the way I kind of think of the course. It's like, okay, it's all kind of packaged and it's going to unfold. And I've never done that before, but I'll figure it out with your direction. And just seeing it unfold is, I can see that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something that really makes me excited about this new world of digital education, online education, because it's really in the traditional way. If we were to teach something to someone, it would be a one-to-one kind of relationship. We would have to rent out a lecture hall. We would have to commute there. We would have to speak in front of a giant stage, prepare the lecture slides, and every single time we have to make that talk, we have to repeat it over and over again. We have to repeat the same points over and over again. It's just really grueling. It's very inefficient. And on top of that, there's just a lot of operational costs as well as renting out the room. If you presented at an academic conference, you might actually have to even take time off and actually fly there, book a hotel room.
Oh yeah.
It's just really grueling. But in the world of the on digital world, you just need to record yourself, present it properly just once, and publish it on the internet. And in doing so, you create an asset that works for you even while you sleep, completely on automated, on autopilot. So you could be serving students from all across the world, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, even underserved countries like India, China. You could expand your global reach with work that you've essentially put in upfront, right? It's almost like a compounding interest. You put in a bit of work upfront, but that work for you even while you sleep. So your work works on you more than you work on it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and the little twists and turns that will come up. But yeah, it's the next step, and it feels just like a natural progression. So it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this, maybe they haven't joined our program yet. I'm sure a lot of our community members are already really inspired by your transformation in your story. But some people outside of our community that aren't really aware of all these results or these transformations we have inside our community, they might be thinking of it, but they haven't made their decision yet. Maybe something's holding them back. Maybe it's like no time, no money. Maybe they don't even think it's possible. Or maybe they're just not even aware of this as an opportunity. And I believe that, it's in these, what advice do you have for people like that? They're sitting on the sidelines while a lot of us are taking on this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to that synchronicity thing. I think that if you have an idea or something that's just that it repeats itself in your mind, or you'll be going through your day and you get the certain theme with patients over and over again. It's like, wow, what's going on with this? Or there's an area of expertise that that you've really dug into and looked at all the journals, looked at all the ways of looking at this problem. Say, no, I got this figured out. Because if we specialize in something, even if it's just an area of very small interest, we can know more about that than anybody else. because they may not have the time or the interest to have gone into it to the degree. So that burning idea that repeats itself, which continually kind of comes up to the surface with the work at the clinic or the hospital or whatever. I think that's the nugget that needs to get nurtured. And like we said before, this is a system that allows you to do that. And it's way faster and way less time. And, when you factor it all out, way less expensive than doing it yourself, because I mean, frustration time to me is way more expensive than work time. If I'm spending time and I'm frustrated, that's like 3 times my hourly fee. So if I can avoid the frustration, that's well worth it. And having it done and saying, okay, this is the step by step, that just takes that frustration fee out of the picture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny because medicine and a lot of our the healthcare providers we serve, it's a very traditional field, right? And they, first of all, they might not be aware that this is even an opportunity in the digital world. They might just be living under a rock. But number two, they don't really they understand how it works in the traditional sense, but they don't understand how it works in the new world of education. And what I mean by that specifically is, I would willingly pay someone in order to kind of get ahead, in order to learn, right? I've paid for my own tuition in medical school. I've paid to learn from the best of the best in the surgical world, right? I paid in order to shadow certain doctors, in order to learn how to do certain procedures, different techniques. And I understand that this is an investment in my own career, in my own education. But at the same time, some doctors would feel hesitant to invest in a coaching program or a business coach or a consulting agency, or even a program like this, or they would hesitate to even invest in their own education, even though this can generate massive return on investment for them. They would rather figure things out by themselves. They would rather go through trial and error, years and years of their own expertise, just before they eventually join a program like this and follow a system.
Yeah, that. I mean, I tend to be pretty independent and want to do it myself, and that gets me into trouble sometimes. But having the frustration factor sort of taken down a bunch of notches, that was just huge. So, yeah, for sure. The other thing that you point out, I think this was in the second section. Just wanted to mention quickly. The last thing, if you take a course or you take a quiz about what's your favorite idea for your career, when you're in high school or something like that. Whenever I do those, being a salesperson was like the last thing that was on my list. So the way it's evolved is that core idea, that nugget that you have, you're going to feel passionate about that. And it's not a sales passion. It's because of the material or the application of that knowledge or whatever it is. It's not something that, I just want to sell this like candy on the street. So your course puts it into a way that it doesn't feel like you're just, pushing somebody to buy something. It's very much allowing your interest and your experience and your expertise to show itself. Say, look at this. I've really researched this. I know this stuff cold. I can teach it to you. And here's how you do it. And it just doesn't feel like a sales thing at all. So to me, that was also really refreshing because I was thinking, geez, I don't know if I can sell because that was, like I said, last on my list. So that was refreshing too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as doctors, as doctors and healthcare providers or nurses, we don't think of actually selling our expertise. And that's not really the right frame of mind. It's more so that we know we have a good product. We know that we have the knowledge and expertise to help people. It's positioning yourself in a way that you can communicate that value to someone so that they can understand. And we do this all the time anyway. It's almost like if you were interviewing for the board exams or for a medical job, right? You would still have to sell yourself. But really, it's more about presenting your accolades, presenting what you're good at in the best possible light, and the students would just come to you automatically, and the clients
Yeah.
would come to you automatically.
Yeah, that's a good parallel. I think that's it. It's like, hey, you go in there with the confidence that, yeah, I know this stuff, and yeah, I can teach it, and it's important, and this is why it's important. And then it's kind of even better than a product, because you're really sharing that passion and sharing something that you are knowledgeable about. So it really just feels good to get it out there.
Yeah. One extra thing is you mentioned one thing that people tend to ask it a lot is what's the community and the support like when you're going through a program?
Right. Yeah. So there's weekly Zoom meetings that I'm sure you do more than one because you have a bunch of students, but you sign up for a time, and that's great because it's an hour of sort of like, okay, what questions are there? And I've been impressed at the depth that you've gone into to answer people's questions. It's not this cursory thing where, oh wow, there's 15 people here, so yeah, just fix that and then you're good. No, you go into depth about how to fix it. Let's look at some of the data to see what your responses are and where that might be an issue or maybe not. And so that's been impressive. And a couple of the folks in the course have similar sort of mindset as my idea. So we've gone back and forth a little bit and sort of seeing where everybody's in a different place. And then, they kind of have one of those eureka moments and they kind of jump up a couple notches like, oh yeah, this worked. So it kind of feeds the process. So that's been really helpful. And for me, it's also just fascinating to hear other people's ideas. It's like, wow, I think that would be really cool to do if I had a whole nother career to do it. So that's been kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I think the community element is something that a lot of people, I personally even overlooked. In the last year alone, in 2021, I've probably spent over $120,000 in my own education, just learning from other people in the online education space and working with them like some of them are in fitness, some of them are in fields that are just so crazy, like hypnosis. And there are also some others that are working in other business spaces, like starting a private practice, and just learning from all of them. And one thing that I really overlooked is the community aspect, because I think a lot of the times when as doctors or as healthcare providers, we're just surrounded by other doctors and healthcare providers that are perfectly comfortable working 60 or 80 hours per week, or doing night shifts, or filing paperwork, dealing with insurance claims.
Right.
That that we don't even know, first of all, this is even possible. And number two, we don't even believe that we can do this ourselves. But just like whenever you're trying to lose weight, or whenever you're trying to quit smoking or quit alcohol, or do anything transformative, like starting an online course or healing the world with the expertise that you already have. When you surround yourself with other people that are on the same path as you, on the same wavelength as you, it's just so motivating and encouraging, because you hear all these ideas from different people. You get to learn from their mistakes, and they also get to learn from you. It's a very collaborative environment when you're surrounded by people that think like you, that they're essentially doing the same thing that you're doing, but each with their own unique skill set.
Yeah, I think that is true. When when people introduce themselves, the same theme would come up over and over and over. It's like, gosh, I'm spending a lot of time in this system that isn't really, I don't know, sort of humanistic. It's gotten taken over by the system itself rather than the humanistic focus of being positioned. And they want to change that. They want to change that in a meaningful way. And they have a great idea about how this is one little area where they can do it. And just hearing that same theme kind of over and over, it is really encouraging. It's like, well, maybe we are reaching critical mass in that regard, and really things are going to change in a profound way. And it just feels like maybe this is part of it.
Yeah, 100%. And finally, we'll wrap it up with to the people that are on the fence still watching this. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I guess if there's that nugget of an idea that just keeps coming up, and you want to put it out there and just not sure how, and you have a similar intolerance for frustration, just go for it, because the returns, as far as the finances, that'll happen because it's a sensible system. It's something that is designed to bring back those returns, so it ultimately pays for itself, and it gives you a creative outlet for this sort of nugget burning idea that you have. And there's some great ideas out there. So you know things that other people need and can really help their practice or their work with medicine, work with people, and yeah, just let it rip. Go for it.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what really makes my work so valuable, because it's seeing doctors like yourself and healthcare providers like yourself package the expertise that they already have into the online world to cross that chasm.
Yeah.
Being that part of your journey, helping you bridge that gap and serve more people on the global scale without even sacrificing your time. That's what makes my work and my team's work really fulfilling. And I can't thank you enough for that. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate it.
100%. And I'm really excited for your success, because we're just getting started. I mean,
That's right. That's right. Just the start. All right. See you soon. Thanks all.
Perfect. Thank you.